are going to be presenting. We have, starting again from my far right, we have Karen Hatch, who's presenting on, what did you just say? Clinical child, right. Anna Maria Mora, counseling psychologist, who's going to present on counseling adolescents. Siobhan Cyrus Williams, clinical psychologist, who's going to present on forensic. And Donald Laguerre, who is going to present on sports psychology. So, we thank them all for being here, and we look forward to the presentations. Does anybody have a PowerPoint that they need to do?
No, ma'am.
No?
Nope.
Okay, so
Those people left.
all those people left.
The talkers are going.
Right, okay, so
I will start.
Anna Maria will
Yeah.
kick off. There you go.
Morning, everyone. I am a counseling psychologist, and I said I would begin because I work with normal people who have a temporary break in transmission. Okay, this is what counseling is all about. We help people to make wise choices for their future because obviously the choices that they are making now are not working. And that's normal. Change is normal. Every day we are changing and we have problems. Parents not accepting their children are growing and maybe growing away from them. And teachers, we have a lot of issues with people just from day to day accepting the fact that life is different every day. And this is where counseling psychology comes in. If you leave your mess to get too heavy and you're not sleeping and you're hearing voices and you're kind of going crazy, then I may have to send you to clinicals, okay, who will work with you and might decide, well, you might need stelazine or something, so go to a psychiatrist. But we are at that level. So I work with adolescents. That's my love, working with teenagers. I was trained, well, I started in the system as a trained teacher. And then we began the guidance and counseling unit in Trinidad in the 70s. So don't check up too much my age. Marjorie will do the maths and stats, okay? Not you. So in late 1970s, the Trinidad and Tobago, there was an arrangement with the World Bank. So you found all those junior secondary schools being built with guidance counseling rooms. And I was one of, I think, 20 locals who were chosen to do the guidance and counseling because I taught social studies and English. I started as a trained teacher in Sacred Heart Girls. That is where I met one day a little 5-year-old coming like this on a Monday morning. And I had to pry her hand open and saw a big hole here getting septic. And I had to do the investigation, and the mother said to me that she sent this little 5-year-old to the shop and she came back with 25 cents short. And the mother calmly told me she put a fork with a 25 cents on the fire and pressed it in her middle of her hand. Nothing was done with it. I had to take the child to the hospital. There was no redress with police or anything. We all know that. And I mean, now it's a little better, but... So I breathed hard. And then when I moved to Barataria Senior Camp, and that is where I met a young man, and that is where my adolescent work came in. I met a young man, very, very, when you look at him, you see Africa, the Congo, or whatever. And he came to school very disheveled, his hair, no barber, big plaits. That's the early 80s. And I just said to him, hello, morning, how are you? How are things going? And he looked at me like this. He said, you know, nobody ever asked me that before. And I could not shake this young man off. He wanted to carry my books. He wanted, every time I look, he was there. And then the guidance unit, I spent 6 years there, and the guidance unit started, and there were a few of us who were chosen to work with it because they had gone to Canada. Muriel Green had gone to Canada and recruited some Trinidadians who worked in Canada in the penal system and what have you. And of course, those Canadians came, they were offered to to come back into Trinidad, lock, stock, and barrel. They were offered all these things, and it never happened. All their things stayed for years in customs. They could not, they had to go back and live with parents and take a little room here and there. And that was very distressing, so a lot of them went back. And this is where they took the locals. And that is where I began my work with adolescents. Then I went to Columbia University and did an MA and MEd in psychological counseling. One of the things I learned there is that if you want to teach, you had to have a master's to teach in the system, an MA. But if you wanted to practice, and you had to do an MEd. So I stayed and did the MEd and came home and opened a youth center in Arouca called Mariama. Mariama is an African word meaning gift from God. It's a youth center. I work with adolescents. Strictly, it started with that, but I have, little ones coming in. I'm finding primary schools are suspending and expelling 9-year-olds, something that was I never imagined that primary schools would be asking parents to find other schools for these children, 9-year-olds. I have a 9-year-old now who has been home for 2 weeks. I'm trying to get him in a school and can't. So I had to go back to the principal and say, listen, I'm going to work with this child every evening after school, please. And she agreed, so he comes to me 3 evenings a week. 9 years old, whose mother pinches him and hits him in his head, and I have to work with her too. She's 32 and having her 7th child. And all these things that need serious work. I mean, I'm listening to the fact that you can't get too much remuneration. It took 20 years to buy a car. After I started my youth center, I sold my car. It took 20 years just by to present on my youth program and counseling adolescents. So that, they talked about opportunities. I mean, I got a little stipend. They paid my way to the Philippines and to The Hague and everything. But the education has been, I really couldn't pay for that. So children from Laventille, and I did arts with them in groups. I had some assistants, put them in groups, and I just gave them paint and say, just let me know how you feel. You all know what this is saying about that young man? Laventille, 11 years old. That is all his world here. So I had to work with the parent and let them know, because one of the things about children is that we don't teach them the words to use to express feelings. And that is you have books thick like this with feeling words, And all when you ask them how you're feeling, they'll shake the shoulder and they know, and all right. They don't know what to say. This is a 20-year-old who is a lifeguard. Look at that big black hole. About 2 weeks after this, he cuffed down somebody in Mayaro. So that there are avenues, there are things. When I was at Arima Senior Comp, I did a book called Youth in Search of Self, and I'm going to end with this. I mean, these young people wrote about youth, they wrote about suicide, they wrote about what being a teenager is, and you learn so much from them. Things that maybe they would not tell me in my office, but I see it here. This 14-year-old wrote about people. I mean, this changed my life. This was before I went away to study. And one of the things for me is, when I was at Sacred Heart and I tried to get leave to come and do my first degree here, my school supervisor refused to sign my leave. And she said, why are you going to do that? Is it to boost your ego? Because I had the netball, I had the dance, I was secretary of the PTA. You know, I'm that kind of in everything. So when I decided, look, I needed to go and do my degree, she said, you know, this will affect your marriage because your husband not into them things. She knew him. I said, okay, let me breathe. And I had to be running up here during this lunch hour to do my classes and run back down before 1 o'clock. Ask somebody to kind of cover for me until I come back. And I just got 6 months to do my final year. Right? No pay, I had to take it. So my transcript was not a happy thing. Okay? My transcript was the worst. When I applied to Columbia University, I was in shock when I saw I didn't know it before. But when I got it, I said, oh, no expletive. So that what I got into Columbia on was all these things that I had done. I had a profile of work I did over the years with young people from primary right up to Barataria Senior College. And they were in shock because when they showed me my transcript, I was most embarrassed. But they said, Miss Mora, this is amazing because they did not see this with people who had A's and B's and all their transcripts. So I had a portfolio of work because I work. And that is how I got into Columbia and spent, well, I did my MA and then MEd and decided I wanted to come home. I didn't want to do the EdD or PhD. There were about 12 Trinidadians in the program. 2 of us came back to Trinidad and 1 left within 2 years and went back. Because they all expected me to go back. But I love New York with a passion. I like the village and all the jazz and stuff. I visit my friends ever so often. But I came home and decided that was what I wanted to do. So after 2 years back, I left because a principal was quarreling with a child. They found him shaking 25 cents from a phone booth in Frederick Street. He got about maybe $12.25. And the police brought him to school. And I was called to the office. And I told the principal, I need this child in school. I don't want him suspended or expelled. And that was in 1990. And the principal said, no, I said, I can't work with this child because as a guidance officer, they were always calling it to meetings. They were always out of the school. And I wanted this child in school. And that was when I picked up my bag, the child walked out, went to YTC, and I walked with my bag, no pension, no gratuity, no nothing. And I had to start over after many years. But I'm happy. So we'll talk a little bit later.